The way each country counts these homes is different, but the picture that emerges is the same all over the world. There are houses with the door still locked. Japan, 9 million. The United States, 15 million. France, 3 million. Brazil, 11 million. Millions of empty homes, and yet millions of people who can't afford a place to live. So what is actually going on? Today we're going to look at 6 countries across 4 continents. Each one has a different story. But somewhere in all of them, there's the same uncomfortable question: why are we building homes that nobody lives in? Let us start with Japan. 9 million empty homes. That is the government's own number. From a survey released in 2024, 13.8% of the entire housing stock. The highest ever recorded, 1 in 7 homes, empty. They even have a name for it. Akiya, it just means empty house. And there are 2 very different kinds. The first kind is out in the countryside. Japan's population is shrinking, and the countryside is feeling it first. An elderly person passes away. Their kids moved to Tokyo years ago. Nobody comes back for the house. It sits there, waits, and eventually becomes another Akiya. Some of these places sell for a few $100s. Some list for $0, and still no takers. The second kind is in Tokyo itself. About 900,000 empty units in the city, more than any other prefecture. But these are not abandoned. In places like Minato and Chiyoda, investors, domestic and foreign, buy apartments, then leave them empty, waiting for prices to go up before they sell. The for sale vacancy rate in Chiyoda ward is 16%. In Minato, unoccupied investment condos are a known and recognized issue. So it is really 2 problems sitting on top of each other. The countryside is emptying because people left. The cities are filling with empty homes because investors arrived and decided not to live there. By 2043, researchers think 1 in 4 homes in Japan could be empty. France tells a similar story with a very Parisian twist. As of 2024, France has 3.1 million vacant homes. That is 8.2% of the housing stock, up 60% since 1990. But here is what makes it interesting. The emptiness is not where you would expect it. Sure, there are abandoned farmhouses in rural Burgundy, empty villages in the Creuse where vacancy rates push past 15%. People left, owners got old, buyers never came. That part makes sense. But Paris, nearly 1 in 5 homes in Paris is unoccupied, 19%, and the reason is completely different. A lot of those empty Paris homes belong to people who have no intention of living there, no rush to rent them out either. The home just sits there getting more valuable. The owner waits. Meanwhile, Paris has one of the tightest rental markets in Europe. One listing, nearly 600 applications. Average rents have almost doubled since the turn of the century. Buyers from the US, the Middle East, Asia, they are going after the exact neighborhoods locals can least afford to lose. Paris has shed nearly 700,000 residents from its peak. People pushed out to the suburbs. The government keeps expanding the empty home tax. Nearly 3,700 municipalities now. The tax is real. The empty homes are still there. Same country. 2 completely different reasons a door stays locked. Spain's story is actually 2 stories, and you need both to understand what is happening. Story 1 starts with a crash. In the early 2000s, Spain was building more homes per year than Germany, France, and the UK put together. Towns were going up along the coast, in the interior, built on the assumption that demand would catch up. Then 2008 hit hard. Developers went under, and all those homes, built in places where real demand never existed, just sat there. Today there are an estimated 3 million vacant properties across Spain, out in rural Castilla, in forgotten coastal towns, in ghost urbanizations. The homes are there, empty, rotting, but story 2 is happening at the exact same time, and it is the opposite problem. In Madrid and Barcelona, there is a housing emergency. In 2024, around 15% of all property transactions in Spain were made by foreign buyers. Their purchasing power is roughly 70% higher than Spanish buyers. They move fast, pay cash, and close before locals can even get a mortgage application in. Rent in Barcelona is up 53% over the past decade. Madrid's city centre saw a 21% jump in a single year. You can barely find a one-bedroom under 2,000 euros a month now. Young Spaniards are spending up to 70% of their income on housing. The average age of leaving home is 30, and the rental supply has shrunk 57% in 3 years, mostly because landlords figured out Airbnb pays better than a long-term tenant. The government moved aggressively. In April 2025, the Golden Visa program, residency in exchange for 500,000 euros in real estate, was shut down. 90% of those purchases had been concentrated in 6 locations: Barcelona, Madrid, Malaga, Alicante, the Balearics, and Valencia, the exact places where the crisis is worst. They have also floated a 100% purchase tax on non-EU buyers. Prime Minister Sanchez said it plainly: housing is a constitutional right, not a speculative business. Spain built homes in the wrong places, and the homes in the right places got bought up by people who never planned to live in them. In the United States, 15 million homes sit vacant, about 10% of the entire housing stock. But again, it is 2 stories. Story 1 is Detroit. Detroit once had nearly 2 million people. At its peak, one of the most prosperous cities in the world, the heart of the American auto industry. Then the factories closed, the jobs went, the people followed. Today, the population is under 700,000. Entire neighborhoods have been abandoned. Houses that once sold for hundreds of thousands go for a few thousand or less. The city has been tearing down vacant homes for years and still cannot keep up. Story 2 is everywhere else. While Detroit hollows out New York, San Francisco, Miami, they cannot build fast enough. Rents at record highs. People who cannot find anywhere to live at all. 15 million empty homes, and still a housing crisis. The homes exist. They are just in the wrong places, held by the wrong people, at prices only the wrong people can pay. Brazil has 11 million empty homes and a housing shortage of 6 million units. At the same time, this is the most extreme version of the paradox we have been tracing. Brazil does not have a shortage of homes. It has homes in the wrong places at the wrong prices for the wrong people. There are 12,348 favelas across the country, home to 16 million people, about 8% of the population. Informal settlements built by people who had no other option. No running water in some, no sewage. Built from whatever was available. And a few kilometers away, apartment buildings stand empty. In Sao Paulo alone, nearly 600,000 vacant units and 400,000 families without decent housing. The homes are not missing. What is missing is the bridge between the homes and the people who need them. The UK's numbers look smaller. About 1 million empty homes across England, around 300,000 classified as long-term vacant as of 2025. But the UK story is worth telling because it shows something the others do not quite capture. In places like Kensington, and Chelsea, some of the most expensive real estate in the world sits empty for most of the year. These are not abandoned. They are investment assets bought by overseas buyers as somewhere to park wealth, left unoccupied while the price climbs. At the same time, 117,000 families in England are in temporary accommodation. 151,000 children do not have a stable home. Housing has become a financial instrument, and a financial instrument does not need to be lived in to be valuable. So, 6 countries, 6 different stories, but the same uncomfortable pattern running underneath all of them. The World Economic Forum put it clearly in 2025. This is not a housing shortage, it is a housing mismatch. But I want to push that one step further, because when you look across all 6 countries, 3 forces keep showing up. The same 3 every time. One of them is global money. In Tokyo, foreign investors account for up to 40% of new apartment sales in central wards. Chinese buyers alone make up 40% of the customers at Tokyo real estate agencies. They pay cash, they move fast, and with the yen down 35% against the dollar since 1994, Japanese real estate looks like a discount sale to anyone earning in dollars or euros. In Spain, 15% of all transactions in 2024 went to foreign buyers, with purchasing power 70% higher than locals. The Golden Visa brought money from China, Russia, the UK, the US, Iran. 90% of those purchases landed in 6 cities, the same 6 where the housing crisis is worst. In the US, Chinese buyers spent $13.7 billion on residential real estate in a single year. The top foreign buyer group by dollar volume. 71% paid all cash. Compare that to 28% for all US home buyers. When you do not need a mortgage, you win every bidding war. In Paris, foreign buyers are only 3% of the national market, but they concentrate in exactly the neighborhoods locals can least afford to lose. A 60 square meter apartment in Paris now costs the equivalent of nearly 14 years of average salary. Same pattern everywhere. Global wealth flows into the world's most desirable cities, pays cash, outbids locals, and treats housing as a financial asset. The IMF looked at affordability across 40 countries in 2024 and found it is now harder to buy a home than it was during the bubble that caused the 2008 crash. Prices up, rates up, wages not keeping up. The second issue is tourism. In 2024, the world saw 1.47 billion international tourists, up 12% from the year before. France crossed 102 million for the first time ever. Spain hit 94 million. Japan set its own record, 36.9 million visitors, 8.1 trillion yen in spending, the country's second largest export after automobiles. But this boom has a shadow. The city's tourist flood are the same cities where locals can no longer afford to live. Because Airbnb handed landlords a simple calculation. 3 nights of tourists versus 3 years of a local family. The tourists pay more. Spain's rental supply shrank 57% in 3 years, mostly because of the switch to tourist rentals. In Berlin, a 2024 study found Airbnb-style rentals pushed rents up by 2.7%. In Lisbon and Porto's historic centres, over 30%. Barcelona is banning all 10,000 short-term rental licenses by 2028. As long as tourists pay more than residents, homes will keep leaving the long-term market. And cities slowly stop being places people live and become places people visit. In the end, people can move, but houses cannot. And it is accelerating everywhere. Japan's population has been falling since 2008. By 2043, nearly 6 million homes could be sitting with no clear owner, no clear purpose. Rural villages where one aging resident is the last person left. The declining birth rate, and again, population in Europe cannot be overlooked. Detroit lost over 60% of its peak population. Parts of Burgundy in France are seeing vacancy rates above 15% as young people head to Paris. In Brazil, 12,348 favelas, home to 16 million people, sit alongside 600,000 vacant units in Sao Paulo alone. The homes are where the economy used to be. The people have moved to where the economy is now, and not enough new homes have been built in the new places to keep up. Three forces. One result: global money flows in and pushes prices out of reach. Tourism turns homes into hotels. And in the places people are leaving, homes sit and rot. Governments are reacting. Golden visas cancelled, empty home taxes expanded, Airbnb caps introduced. But the money moves faster than policy. When housing is worth more as an asset than as a home, the asset wins every time. Across the globe, more and more homes are sitting empty, their doors locked tight. Ideally, a house should be a place to live and grow, but now they're often seen as either a financial burden or just another asset for investors to flip for profit. People say we're running out of land, yet tens of millions of houses remain unused. How can we make better use of these hidden resources? Is it time to finally stop building and start fixing what we already have? The gap between empty houses and people without homes is widening. What kind of impact will this paradox have on our lives moving forward? What's the situation like where you live? I'd love to hear your take on this issue in the comments. Catch you in the next one.